Good night and welcome to another edition of In Touch with me, JD Japie Emmanuel. It is a rainy Monday. I think we should be thanking God for his blessings because we know that the past few weeks have been extremely hot and dry. And apart from how we feel, we were faced with that crisis, and I believe we are still in that critical period where WASCO continues to monitor rainfall and continues to monitor how much water we have available for distribution. And so if you are tempted to complain about the rain this afternoon leading into tonight, you should think again and just hope that we don't get too much, that we are overwhelmed, but at the same time we get enough that we can begin to find our way out of the water crisis that we are facing right now. Today is June 15th, and by now you should be aware that the price of our petroleum products have been adjusted. Most of them, all but kerosene, in fact, adjusted upwards. But despite the increases we see in the 20-pound and 22-pound cylinders, government continues to subsidize both of these products by over $10. In one case, it is about $13. In the other case, it's about $12. And so, whereas we are seeing increases, government continues to subsidize to ensure that the price of these two commodities in particular will not be too high and out of the reach of our low-income individuals. Tonight, I will be focusing on matters related to physical development, housing, and urban renewal. I'm extremely pleased that Senator Honorable Stanley Felix is in studio with us. There is a lot I know that we would have to cover within the hour. This has been a very busy ministry, not one of the visible ministries, I must say, except when there is a problem or if we are of the view that a project that is taking place should not take place, or if we have questions in terms of affordability and access to housing in particular. And so not one of the flamboyant or sexy ministries, but one of the critical ministries indeed. So Senator, I welcome you to the program tonight.
Thank you, JD. Thank you for having me. I was actually wondering how long it would have taken you to get back into the show. And
well, you are here. You're here.
Thank you very much.
And I meant to talk to you for a while now, so I'm glad you're with us tonight. Coming out of the budget, you presented very recently, just as we started the program, to get your own view, your overview as to the budget and what stood out for you. I know that you spoke in terms of what will be happening in your ministry. But how do you feel having presented not simply on your ministry but also representing on behalf of the government and speaking to some of the policies outlined in the budget?
Well, basically, I thought that it was a budget which sought to further strengthen and consolidate our our fiscal situation. It sought to further stimulate different sectors of the economy, in particular tourism and agriculture. And as you well know that we didn't register much gains in terms of the construction sector. I think going forward there were a lot of different policies and different projects that are on stream, which we should see manifesting later on this year and into next year, which is something that I think all St. Lucians will be very happy about. I like the idea of investing in agriculture, in particular the YAP program, which is a program that's been there for the last from last year.
Yes.
And investing further in that is very important. But the whole idea of fiscal consolidation continues, and the prospects for growth seems very real. And so I think I'm very optimistic that come 2016, we'll be talking about economic growth.
In the eyes of the layman, the economy is doing well when people are constructing homes or when we see some kind of construction activity happening in our communities or as we move around the island. Over the years, many persons have been clamoring for access to affordable housing. And of course, one of the first steps would be access to affordable lands. And year after year, not just in St. Lucia, but if we look at what is happening around us, we realize that the value of land appreciates. And so many persons are finding it difficult to access housing and would be dependent on the government of St. Lucia for some form of project so that they can tap into it and take advantage of it. We saw a number of projects start under the former administration, and they looked very exciting. happening. They look feasible. In some instances, Marigo, for example, we started to see some work happening. Members of the public were engaged. In View Fort, we had the St. Jude East, for example, and we do not have a clear idea as to where exactly these projects are, whether these projects are even feasible at this time. Can you update us as to where we are in terms of some of the projects inherited under the former administration?
Well, there was, okay. I will start with the Marigo housing development, as it was so called. I will be very blunt with you and tell you that this was a failed project. And in fact, it never quite got off the ground, despite the fact that millions of dollars were spent trying to develop the land and what have you. It was advertised as a house and land development, which of course never materialized. In fact, the only two houses that were built on that site were houses from persons who were desirous of actually providing the actual housing. In fact, they were demo houses. And so they were there, but no houses, any houses were not. No houses were actually built on that particular site. Over $12 million was spent, and to date.
And no houses?
Over $12 million was spent. Apart from the over $12 million being spent, most of the land was sold. Most of the land was sold. The sales of those lands apparently must have gone into the actual infrastructure, I suppose, because we didn't find it there. And so it really was a disaster. As we stand right now, most of the lands that are left are not very desirable for construction, although they can be salvaged. But it makes little or no sense to try to spend monies that we don't have to try to resuscitate this project. So we chose to look elsewhere.
So what would be, for the individuals who have purchased land in this area, for example, or those who were engaged to benefit from this development, what would be their form of recourse, if any?
Well, I mean, the infrastructure is there. They can go ahead and build their homes.
Because they own the property?
Yes, because they own the property. What was offered at the beginning as a house and land development ended up being just a land development.
Okay, so the cost would be adjusted?
Well, you'd pay, first of all, the cost of developing the land was somewhere about $19 to $20 a square foot, but the lands were sold for like $9 a square foot.
Oh.
Because it was advertised at that price, and some of the lands were pre-sold. Okay. So you understand why it had to be a disaster. So there were mistakes across the board.
In terms of View Fort, what is happening at St. Jude's?
St. Jude's, the intention was to develop those lands as well, but unfortunately, this is the property is in dispute. As far as the ownership of the property is in dispute. As we speak right now, the property is registered in the name of the Crown, and there is a private entity or individual contesting that title, and so it's before the Crown at the moment, before the courts at the moment.
And so we have two projects, and I think many persons now are seeking to look forward, especially those who are desperately in need of an opportunity for housing, an opportunity to be able to start their family and so on. We have heard a number of projects being announced and outlined by your ministry.
Yes.
Having spoken about what we inherited, I think many individuals now would be very cautious and would be asking, how are we certain that the ministry that you lead will put all of the necessary mechanisms in place to ensure that these individuals do not seek to invest or invest in projects that will turn out to be failed projects? So what is it that was not done in the past that we will ensure that we do now, so that the projects that we are proposing and the developers that we are engaging will meet the criteria to deliver to the people of St. Lucia?
Well, I think in the case of Marigo, there were a lot of mistakes that were made in terms of the assessment of the land itself. Whereas we thought perhaps it would have cost them maybe $8 to develop, and it ended up costing them $19 to $20 to develop. So that is a monumental error. As far as the management of the resources in terms of the provision of the contracts to do the work, that was a runaway train as well. And I don't really care to go down that way too much, because I don't want to leave the impression that I'm here to bash. I'm not here to bash.
Right.
That is just the reality that obtained at the time. Now going forward, we're quite different. Okay, under my stewardship, we will ensure that this is not that's not what's going to happen, because we have taken all the necessary precautions to ensure that we have the numbers right. We've entered into contracts that are quite firm, and there aren't a million different people being paid to do what one person could essentially do and provide the necessary employment. Of course, we are concerned and cognizant of the fact that we need to create employment for as many people as possible. But by giving one reputable firm a contract with the stipulation that they employ as many people as possible, we believe that we meet the same objective. And in our developments, that is basically what we are proposing to do. That is the ones that we control.
Indeed. I noticed that we are moving very quickly in the direction of actually engaging individuals to begin developing new areas. From very early, you spoke of new developments in Babono, for example. We spoke a lot about what is happening in Bois de Wage, for example, the housing development there. I'm hoping that we can get an update on that. But just before we go to a commercial break, I want to speak a little bit about your engagement with Liberty Group, because the government of St. Lucia did sign, I believe it was a memorandum of understanding.
Yes.
So when we come back from the commercial, I want to speak about that and to outline some of the areas so that the viewers can get an idea as to where exactly we'll be looking at and where the opportunities will be available, so that if they desire, they can make applications.
Most certainly.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the commercial break. Welcome back to In Touch with me, Jadia Jean-Pierre Emmanuel. My guest is Senator Honorable Stanley Felix, and we are discussing matters related to his ministry, physical development, housing, and urban renewal. Minister, a little bit more about the Liberty Group. I know that we signed an agreement and we're looking to develop more opportunities or housing. I suspect it is in the north of the island. Can you give us some more information on that?
When we seek to develop housing, basically, when we think about housing, we think about the entire country, and we do not just focus on the north. The Liberty Group basically is an outfit from the UK, whose primary interest is to develop housing in St. Lucia and other territories in the Caribbean and in Asia and Europe. That's what they're into. The agreement that we signed, you would have heard that there was the involvement of some Chinese company. Right, there is. But we have no agreement with the Chinese company. Liberty Group has an agreement with the Chinese company, in that the Chinese company will be the entity that will be capitalizing the projects. Liberty Group goes out and finds the projects. In the case of St. Lucia, for example, we said, listen, we have some housing developments that we'd like to undertake. We do not quite have the financial capacity to do it at this time. Okay? They have said, okay, we would like to assist you with that. So we are now working out the details as to which sites, okay, and working at the numbers. So
the sites have not yet been selected?
Well, the sites have not, the sites have been identified. Okay, the technical people are looking at it, conducting the surveys, doing the costings and whatnot, and then once this is done, then we'll be in the position to decide exactly which sites that would be the first ones to go. But definitely in this current financial year, we are going to start at least 2 projects.
Currently, what housing projects can we speak of that the viewers can actually say, okay, I am seeking an opportunity, I'm seeking to purchase and to build, here is an opportunity I can tap into. Do we have any developments that are currently on stream that are out of the pipeline and out of the planning stage?
Are you talking about house and land, or are you talking about the availability of suitable land for housing construction?
Well, I think both, because there are some who would be able to afford the house and land, and some individuals who seek to purchase to build at their own time.
The easiest one is is, of course, you know, and it's been spoken about quite extensively in the media and elsewhere. We know about the Marshy Development Program, Marshy Housing Development. We do have some 22 houses that will be going up for sale in the next 2 weeks or so. We have that. We also have serviceable land in the Broadwash area. Some people say, well, Tria, Broadwash, same thing.
Yeah.
We have serviceable land there that we are developing, and that is almost at the tail's end. It should be ready by the end of July.
Okay.
I think we're ahead of our construction time frame, and that should be available. We have some 65 lots that will become available for sale in that area. They're beautiful lots, first-class infrastructure, and it's coming on stream, on price, without any type of so-called cost overruns.
Many people are of the view that the Marshy housing development and the houses available there are simply for persons who are being relocated out of, you know, areas that the ministry has decided to be undesirable or unsafe. The 22 houses that would be available for sale, would it be open to members of the public, or will we be, you know, looking at individuals who perhaps have been relocated or will be relocated because of a policy decision from the ministry?
No, the 22 houses that I speak of is part of 42 houses that were built. And 20 of those houses went towards the Conway relocation program.
Okay.
22 of those will be sold on the open market
Okay.
to persons who fit a certain criteria.
And for individuals who are interested, where do they go?
Individuals who are interested could simply go to the housing section of the ministry, that is upstairs the Cox building off Jeremy Street, and simply say that, listen, I am interested in registering my name or filling an application for the Marshy development. They can do the same for the Broadwash housing development, and in future developments, the same procedure would obtain. Now, I want to tell you about upcoming land development and housing developments. We are working very, very, very hard at trying to bring on stream some housing in this current period. I could tell you almost definitely that we will be developing the Talvin lands. This is some 47 acres of land that we acquired upon the assumption of office. And the purpose basically was to bring relief to the people of the Talvin area, Fonson area, most of which have occupied those lands for a very long time. And like proud, not perhaps in the same, it's not the same policies, but basically the idea is to try to regularize the status and to get them ownership of the lands that they currently occupy. But there is some 42 more acres of land that is not occupied, and in that we want to develop a very modern and a new community in that particular area. We are in advanced discussion with a developer that I am not quite at liberty to disclose at this point in time. Ministry of Commerce through Invest in Lucia, they have done the due diligence on that developer, and they are very keen on doing it. They have the technical details, they're going through it, and we are in touch almost on a daily basis, and it looks very, very positive that that will be happening. We are in the same position with some lands that we acquired in Jack Mel, and the purpose of that acquisition basically was first and foremost to relocate some of the persons in the Rosa Valley.
Yes, I meant to
that
ask
is the entrance to the distillers.
Yes,
right.
yes.
That was the original purpose. I think it was the Prime Minister who said to me about 2 years ago, he said, you know, he'd like to do something for those people, you know, and I should really look to see where I can get some land to try to alleviate the situation. Because you may know that anytime it rains heavily, yes, this place is impassable. It's a total flood. It's very flood prone. And so we did identify good suitable lands. We acquired it, and it's now in the name of the Crown. The land has been surveyed, and we are talking to a French developer as far as developing that land. They currently have an application before the DCA for approval of the house types and everything. and it's just a matter of ironing out the details, getting the blessings of the cabinet, and then we're ready to fly. So in the next 2 weeks or so, I hope to put something, bring an application before cabinet, seeking its permission for that development.
Minister, I think it's impossible to discuss housing without touching on the CDC. And I know for many persons, they believe that the CDC apartments need to go. Many persons are of the view too that the method of selection is not a very good one. And two, there are some individuals who are of the view that the government of St. Lucia should be providing alternative housing for some of the individuals in the areas that we have deemed to be unsuitable or unsafe for one reason or the other. What is currently happening? I know that, for example, I believe in Laclery, or in the Castries North area, one of the apartments there, one of the buildings there would have been set for demolition. Where are we currently with that? I know that there was some resistance. I expected that there would be resistance once individuals have lived in an area for some time. So I want to discuss that, and two, the issue of housing in the city especially as well.
Well, let me start with Laclery.
Yes.
Laclery, I think that has been the development of that particular area. That has been the intention of the previous Labour government. In fact, under this government, under the previous government, we had demolished, I think, 2 of those housing units. And the intention, when I came in there, I mean, I live in Laclery, and I could see the degradation of that particular area. I know what obtains there. Naturally, and there's a huge outcry from people from the community to do something about that particular site. Yes, those people who occupy the site, they do have rights, and of course we're going to look after them. We had started that. We started with the actual relocation, and some people actually did buy into our program. Mm-hmm. I think we spent some $200,000 and some odd $1,000 paying people to somewhat of a dislocation grant, not a relocation grant, a dislocation grant, because most of them are occupying buildings, units that are really unsuitable at this point for human habitation. They're unsuitable, and they ought not to be living there. So government, in the exercise of its social responsibility, not just that we want them out, but it's really an exercise of government's social responsibility to at least take care of its people and to safeguard the lives of people. The buildings are not in the best of shape. They are unsafe. The area is pretty much slum. Mm-hmm. And as part of renewing and rejuvenating that part of the community and looking after the welfare of the people, the decision was taken to try to uplift that area.
CDC in the city center now. Tell us a little bit about what the plans are. I know that there is a whole plan for the redevelopment of Port Castries, a harbour, for example. Right. Will that be affecting any of the CDC apartments in that area?
Well, I will tell you that I have not been privy to, neither do I think that there are any plans at this particular point in time to do anything as far as knocking down CDCs. Or no, there is no such decisions have been taken.
Okay.
Yes, Port Castries is in the works. And for me personally, I would like to see it extend further. But as of now, no decision has been taken as far as that's concerned. But there is really, really a need for the development of that area and I guess the rejuvenation of that part of the city. And we can talk a little bit more about that, I guess.
Yes, indeed. In fact, even as we're speaking, I'm receiving so many messages about the CDC, that the CDCs require painting, that the CDCs require this and that. So when we come back, we can speak a little bit about that. Yes. And also, we would like to hear from you, our viewers, as well. You're already sending your messages, but you will get an opportunity to call in with your questions as well. Stay in touch. We'll be right back. Welcome back to In Touch. My guest this evening is Senator Honorable Stanley Felix. Let us talk a little bit about the CDC maintenance and upkeep. And I think you know it would have been a tenant that I got a complaint from that they have to put up with the worst conditions, including noise pollution, as he described it as, and yet there is pressure, he says, to, at the end of the month, to remit rent to housing. Do you think that what is required of the tenant, for example, who lives at the CDC, the rent, do you think it is a reasonable cost or it's extremely high? And why is it that we are not able to provide, because this seems to be a problem not just with the CDC apartments, but when we speak of you know, other services available from the CCC, for example, we seem to have a problem with maintaining our public facilities, even though there is a cost attached to using these facilities. Yeah,
I mean, I sympathize with the person who sent you the message, and it is a problem. I think one of the issues, or one of the reasons really, is that the CDC areas, as it is so called, is in the heart of the city, and it is really in a very public area, and so controlling what happens in and around it is very difficult. Mm-hmm. You have commercial establishments in and around it. You have the Castries Market in the center of it. You have the Castries City Council almost connected to it. And so you have all of this activity on a daily basis. As far as pricing, it is the most reasonable accommodation you can get maybe anywhere in St. Lucia. And St. Lucia is unique in the sense that I don't know of anywhere else in the world that you could be so well placed, occupying very valuable real estate at paying next to nothing for it. Let me give you an example, for example. The people who occupy what is known as the old CDC buildings, that's Jeremy Street and going across. Mm-hmm. The average rent is about $200. $200 a month? There are persons occupying apartments, they're one-bedroom apartments for $145, two-bedroom apartments for $200. I think there is even a 3 or 4 bedroom apartments for less than $300. And this has been like that for the longest while. It was lower as successive governments came in. They added a little 25%, 2%, and it's gone up that high. But it's not very high at all. The difficulty in collecting the payments, do you think it is related to the ability to pay or the willingness to pay? Well, I have to be honest. I mean, I think there are people, due to their own personal circumstances, that are not able to pay at a particular point in time. Mm-hmm. There are people who choose just not to pay because in their view it is the government thing and that the government will not come after them. You see, the problem is deeper. Successive governments, successive politicians have handled the situation badly. Mm-hmm. There are people who tell you that Mr. Mallet put me there and so I'm not supposed to pay rent. Or this person put me there, or Richard Frederick put me there, or this one put me there. I'm not supposed to pay rent. And they actually believe that they're not supposed to pay. There are people who have not paid rent for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. There are people owing $40, $50, $60,000. Wow. There are people living there, which I have discovered, who are living in the city, or who own units in the city, and they own other buildings elsewhere. The people who have units in the city, but how do we deal with that? Who themselves do not live there. There are people who have leased apartments, who have further sublet those units to other people and charge them more money than the National Housing Corporation. And would not be paying the NHC. Yeah. How do we fix these problems, Minister? Well, it is difficult. You go around and you try to ascertain who the culprits are. As far as those persons who are habitual delinquents in terms of them not paying the rents. Naturally, we have to collect the rent. We do not get a subvention from government to take care of ourselves. The National Housing Corporation relies mainly on the revenue from this housing estate to take care, to maintain it, to pay salaries, to pay its debt, and just to finance its operations. People have to be very reasonable. I find it very unfair that other persons in the society have to work hard and pay huge rents pay to buy land, take mortgages, and there are people
taxes on top of
who
that.
exploit the the opportunities that exist for people who are truly in need. I believe there are two people in the CDC who do not really deserve to be in there. This housing estate was not really designed for people to come and live for the rest of their lives. If you fell within a certain criteria, it's supposed to be a place where you pass through, and as you develop, then you move out, make space for somebody else. That is why the rent is so low, and whatnot. But people exploit it, and when you try to enforce the idea that you're supposed to own up to your responsibility, i.e., pay your rent, people go to this minister and that minister and this one and that one, but it doesn't. But with me, I believe that I'm here to serve the people of St. Lucia. I believe fair is fair. You give the people what they need, a good, clean place to live. Okay, you as a landlord, you have certain responsibilities that you have to comply with, and as the tenant, they too have certain responsibilities, chief of which is to pay the rent, and that is a problem that we have.
I can well understand that. We will begin to take your calls at 452-7347. If you have any questions for the minister, or if you want to elaborate on any of the projects that we have discussed, feel free to do so now. We already have our callers on the line. Good night. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, hello. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Do you have any question?
Yeah.
You're on the air.
Yeah. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Concerning the CDC, why can't the government put a place where that the people must go and pay the rent for them to stay in the CDC? The idea of people keep on saying that so-and-so put them there and so-and-so put them there, I don't believe it does work. This kind of system, we are not in it anymore. And the people have big house renting and all this kind of things. It is time that this foolishness should stop in the country.
Sure. Thank you so much for your contribution, Colin. And I think even the minister will
Well, we
agree.
do have a place. We do have a place where they're supposed to pay the rent. They send a bill every month, and they're supposed to pay. They're supposed to pay the National Housing Corporation, which enough people do, but some people do, but a lot of people just choose not to pay. And it is sad because as a tenant, you would expect a certain degree of service.
Yeah.
It inhibits or impedes the type of service that we as the National Housing Corporation would like to provide to the tenants, because the revenue is just not there, because some are paying and a lot of them are just not paying.
I've noticed that in some jurisdictions, there are some critical services that are tied to your rent.
Yes.
So your rent is late, your lights go off, or your water is cut out and so on. But I can well understand that in a society like St. Lucia, for example, it would probably be chaotic to go down that line, especially at a time like now, and I'm speaking about what is happening in the environment, the economy and so on, to tie critical services. But look into the future. Do you believe that in terms of future housing developments of that kind, although I notice government seem to be moving away from that kind of facility, do you think this would be a good approach? No,
well, what we have done to try to guarantee the regularity of and the timeliness of our rents, what we've done, we've attached it to your salary by way of salary deduction. Okay. In that way, we almost are guaranteed to get paid.
But I suppose this would be new engagements.
But some people find ways to disengage that attachment. And when we think the rent is coming, for some strange reason, there have been some collusion with somebody in the accounting department of some company or whatever, and then the rents are not forthcoming. People find all kinds of ways not to pay because they believe that it's government, and if they shout loud enough, somebody will take on the case and make more noise for them, and make it political. And every government seems to be worried about votes and that sort of stuff. I don't see it that way. I don't see it that way. We all have a responsibility. If I take a loan, I have to pay my debt. If you rent from me, you have to pay your rent. If you cannot pay your rent, we will facilitate you. We will work with you.
But I guess it's up to a certain point.
At least make an effort. If your rent is $145 and you have not paid your rent for 6 years, what excuse could you reasonably give as to why you had not paid?
I can well understand that, but even I don't want us to get so tied down to the whole issue of the CDC that we forget to touch on the other areas, including a critical one of urban renewal. We have some developments, I want to call them.
Yes.
People may call them by other names, but there are some developments where people are living under conditions that are just not safe, not fit to raise a family and so on. And there are some individuals within that space looking for a way out and looking for government basically to provide that way out. I know it comes at a huge cost, but only think of some of the other areas. We've dealt with Conway, but when you think of Washoe, for example, and some of these other areas around the city, any plans at all to go in there to look at what is available, the services and so on, and to provide an alternative for those who are willing to move?
You would have heard the Prime Minister in his budget address speak towards looking beyond Moshi and Conway. Okay, he mentioned Wilton's Yard and he mentioned Fulashoe. I am in discussion, and I have been in discussion with the owners of the Wilton's Yard area, more commonly called the Graveyard area, for the government's eventual acquisition of that property and purchase of the property. Further than that, in my ministry, we engage in scouting in the suburban areas of the city, of Castries rather, to find suitable lands for the eventual perhaps relocation, or make those lands available for persons who are desirous of purchasing lands close to the city. We're not talking about relocation, because I do not believe that because you choose to build a shack on land that do not belong to you, that you are owed a piece of land. I don't believe that. The persons who've been there for years, for generations, who've raised families there, and they've been there, I believe priority should be given to these people. And so we are in the process of putting a comprehensive package together so as to create a plan, present a plan for the eventual dislocation or relocation of persons in the urban confines of the city.
Understood. When we come back, we'll be taking more of your phone calls just before we wrap up, so stay in touch. We'll be right back. Welcome back to In Touch. We'll try to take as many of your calls as possible just before we wrap up. So you can call in at 452-7347. And we already have a call on the line. Good night. Thank you for joining us.
Good night.
Hi, good night.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, DJ Japie, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
Yeah. How's Mr. Stanley Felix?
I'm fine, thank you. Good night.
Yeah. I just want to know about the land at Bois.
Yes. Okay.
Sure, thank you for your question.
Are you currently registered for that program?
She's not on.
Okay, well, Bois basically, we have 65 lots that will be putting on sale. All you need to do basically is to go and register at the housing section of the ministry, which is upstairs the Cox building. When you do that, your application will be assessed, and then you'll be given a call and instruct you further.
So you must register, and then the process begins there?
Yes.
Okay, indeed. 452-7347, you can call in with your questions or your comments. Minister, someone is just noting that I'm hearing about developments, but most of them seem to be in the north, Canary, Sufra, Vieux Fort. A lot of lands are available in the south of the island. However, we are not seeing any move from the government on that side.
Yes, we are making significant strides towards addressing the property situation island-wide. Whereas we may have emphasized the north because of the projects that are more imminent. But we have a program, the government, we have a program called the National Sites and Services Program. And unlike the other programs that I've been speaking about earlier, this particular program is funded to the tune of $3.2 million. So we can make a start, and we have made a start. Over the past year, what we have been doing is scouting the entire country to find suitable housing land. We have identified at least 15 lots of land which can produce some 1,500 housing lots in the first phase of that project. To date, we have identified and we have surveyed, and we are at the tail's end of having the infrastructural works commence on those properties. Some of them are we have in Piai, we have in Lafargue, we have in Savans, we have in Belvedere, we have Fairs Estate, which is off the Millennium Highway. We have Forestier, We did include Talvan as part of it as well. We have in Oleon, we have in Bexar Heights.
So basically we've gone around the island.
And I'm talking about properties that we have surveyed, and we
Okay.
have subdivisions that we have made for them. This is what we've been engaged in over the last year, coming into this year. The work has continued. In the next month and a half, or before, we are going to launch that program, and persons who are desirous of owning land, and this is land that we're making available for only first-time land purchasers. If you own land already, this is not for you.
Okay.
This is to give people who do not yet own a piece of land the opportunity to own a piece of land at a reduced and a subsidized price. That is the government's way of empowering St. Lucians with a piece of St. Lucia.
We go to the phone lines. Good night. Thank you for holding. Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. Could you give us an update on the status of the land, the Gabu lands at Mondadon, please?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm very happy you called about that. The Gabu lines, we have pretty much completed the survey. We have been delayed quite significantly due to the contracted surveyor, who was, in my humble view, has been very unprofessional in the way in which he has handled the situation. But we should be wrapping this up by the end of, I'm being told by the end of June, and I'm going to promise you publicly that those lands are going to find themselves in your hands by the end of July.
Many persons are saying when we speak about housing, we use terms like affordable or reduced prices. However, when these projects come on stream and we face the banks, we will be disappointed to be told that we do not qualify, even though we are in steady jobs. There needs to be a match between what the government considers low housing and what we, the people who are in minimum jobs, can afford. We too need an opportunity to own a piece of St. Lucia. We'll take a call, or we've lost that call, but you can call in at 452-7347. Perhaps we can take one or two more calls.
I quite agree with the caller. That's why we moved away from low income to affordable. You know, you would agree it's quite subjective. There are people, even if you sold the house or the land for $50, they would tell you that they can't afford it.
Yes.
Right? And there is, we do understand where the market is at this particular point in time. We notice the salaries of the average person, and we know what types of repayment the banks would require.
So we do take this
as much as possible, we try to cater to the different economic tiers. You have persons who consider affordable housing to be 100,000. There are those who consider it to be 200,000. There are those who consider it to be 300,000. So we try to find ourselves somewhere in the middle, and that is why programs such as the National Sites and Services Program, it contemplates that, because you are taking lands that are worth more and selling it below the market value to help to facilitate that sort of thing.
Good night, you're on the air. We've lost that call. Hello, good night.
Hi, good night.
Hi.
Ms. Chapier.
Hi, good night.
And my Minister Felix.
Good night, sir.
I have a suggestion in terms of building, government building housing. We in St. Lucia, we are a small country, and space is very limited.
Yes.
I noticed the government building legal flat houses spreading all over the place to give to people. Right? Why the government do not embark of building block buildings, about 3 or 4 stories, 2 bedroom, 1 bedroom?
Yes.
And to get them building rented to people instead of spreading legal building all over the place.
Sure. Thanks for that. In fact, somebody was actually suggesting via WhatsApp that government build such housing and sell it. So this caller is saying perhaps we do that and we make it available for rent, which is the CDC, and I suspect if we do not change the laws, we will end up right where we are. But someone was actually suggesting that we build to sell apartments. Your thoughts?
Well, you can. I mean, as part of our housing policy, we are actually encouraging the idea of multifamily dwellings, which is basically something like the CDC.
Yeah.
We believe that the availability of land, of suitable land, is a problem. And so in all of our developments, which is something I omitted to say earlier on, in all of the proposed developments, you will see a multifamily component in there. and that is because we want to reduce space and to focus on affordability. So what the caller is saying is quite correct, but we have contemplated that and we're moving in that direction.
Indeed. I'm getting a lot of questions as to what the requirements are for this and how do you register for that. Before we end the program again, we would like to get a telephone number so that people can call in. But just quickly before we wrap up, there's a project that is happening alongside the VG Airport, the George Charles Airport and the VG Beach. It seems to be at a standstill. In fact, there are rumors that the government has stopped the project because there are plans to shut down the George Charles International Airport because we are redeveloping here in Europe. What is the status of this project? What is happening there?
Actually, to my, I'm very displeased with the delay that has taken place as far as this project is concerned. This project ought to have been almost completed now, and the responsibility lies within my ministry. I'm going to take the blame for it. The reason for the delay, basically, is because the materials, the type of material that's needed had to be procured from outside. Okay. And they were not readily available, and so there was delay in getting it out of Guyana.
So the project is still happening?
We have now received the containers with the materials. The project has restarted. Okay. And in the next 3 weeks, I will be taking the media on a tour to see the progress that has been made. It did start in August of 2014. It stopped. Yes, yes. And it stopped. Okay, so now we have restarted again, and the next 3 weeks we'll take the media on a tour to see the work that's been done, and it will be completed before the end of the year. Excellent.
I know that the phone lines are still going, but unfortunately, we will not be able to take any more calls. There are some messages that I've received via WhatsApp, and so I'll give the minister an opportunity to give a contact number because many persons are interested in how to register for some of the opportunities that are available and more questions on, for example, the lands, where exactly the lands are, how can you take advantage. So a telephone number for, you know, housing or someone in your ministry that would be able to handle it.
You can call my ministry directly, 468-4402, or you can call the National Housing Corporation. I do not know the number offhand, sadly, but you could always look it up in the telephone directory, the National Housing Corporation at Sanssouci. Call them up, they will direct you, or call just the ministry at 468-4402.
As we wrap up the program, what would be the priority area for you this year, at least going into next year, this financial year? What is the priority for your ministry?
Priority for me basically is the establishment of those 2 housing projects and the National Sites and Services Corporation. And before we leave, most importantly, I almost forgot, we have the National Land Rectification Program, which we failed to mention, which is a program by the government to rectify the titles of lands of persons who once owned land but who lost it to the Crown during the LRTP exercise in the 1980s. Pretty soon I will be calling a press conference to talk about that, to sensitize the people about that, because I'm very proud of this initiative. It is one where we are looking to give people back access to the land and for them to engage in different activities that land naturally lends itself to.
It sounds very interesting, and I know that over the years, numerous complaints where people have been going up and down trying to get their documents in order. And so I know many people will be welcoming that initiative. Is it something that is already on stream, or would we have to wait?
The government has made the decision. We have a committee that we're putting in place to deal with those applications. Okay. And it's something that there is no red tape in
Excellent.
It. You prove that you had the previous title. Okay, your documentation is obviously researched and processed, and where we find that yes, it was in fact your land, we will rectify the land register and give you back ownership of your land.
Excellent, and this is a good note to end the program on, something to look forward to from your ministry. I want to thank all of you for tuning into the program tonight. Thank you for calling. A number of messages that I would have to respond to. Of course, I will fill you in with the number to contact the ministry. Again, the number is 468-4402. 4402. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week Monday with another edition of In Touch.